Hello everyone, this is Pavan Sukhdev from Yale University. I'm sorry I can't be with you this morning in this wonderful ship where we are all supposed to be sailing, but I'm here at Yale University recording a message for you, which is really about perhaps what I consider the two most important issues in relation to green economy and TEEB, the economics of ecosystems and biodiversity, which are going to be important in Asia, so long as the communities around green economy and TEEB are able to support them. And truly, that is really what I hope you at the WWF and your colleagues in Asia will be able to do. So firstly, on the point of TEEB, the economics of ecosystems and biodiversity. Now, as you know, many countries have started implementing the TEEB project, not least India and Brazil. And amongst the developed countries, of course, the Netherlands, where we are, is amongst those who is moving ahead with TEEB. But a more interesting dimension of TEEB is TEEB for business. And here, Singapore has taken a significant role of leadership in promoting what I would describe as the TEEB for Business Coalition effort to measure and report and hopefully manage corporate externalities. Singapore has provided a grant and an office space through the Economic Development Board, and I'm hopeful that before the year is out, a full team will be in place and efforts will be underway to be able to coordinate what is effectively a worldwide effort to measure and manage corporate externalities. As some of you may be aware, that the size of corporate externalities, in other words, the costs to nature and to society of doing business as usual in a brown economy, has grown to tremendous proportions. It is now estimated at something like $4 trillion across the corporate world. And out of that, $2.2 trillion is just the top 3,000 corporations, the top 3,000 listed corporations. So this is a matter of grave concern because $4 trillion is almost 7% of global GDP. And we can't clearly continue in this fashion, creating cost to society whilst creating profit for shareholders. This is not a problem specific to Asia, but I'm delighted that Singapore and hopefully partners such as yourselves will take forward what is an initiative in order to first measure and then standardize, and then be able to audit and report these externalities in the form of disclosures. And by that I mean disclosures are statements in the financial statements which relate to the performance of the corporation, but are not part of the profit and loss of the corporation. So we are not talking about a tax, we are not talking about a charge on P&L. What we are talking about is transparency. What we are talking about is the need for corporations to be able to communicate what they are doing and how well they are doing, not in the narrow sense of communicating profit performance to analysts and therefore shareholders, but communicating their wider impacts on society, including their impacts on nature, which could be negative, and indeed their impacts on society in the form of training and education of employees and healthcare for employees, which could be positive. There are many positive externalities of the corporation, and we are not saying that one should merely stop at reporting the negatives. One must also measure and report the positives and manage them in the similar way. But the first step, of course, is to standardize and to collaborate, and this is really what the coalition hopes to achieve. Amongst its members is, of course, the WWF, but there are many corporations, many leaders, and I'm delighted that amongst the hosts of the coalition, in fact, the principal host, is the Institute of Chartered Accountants of the UK. And this is important because finally, it is up to the Institutes of Chartered Accountants, it is up to the accountancy bodies, be it the ICAEW in the UK, or the FASB in the US, or the IASB, the International Accounting Standards Board, to start accepting this as the next stage of evolution. It is the next stage of evolution of the corporation. By doing so, we are in fact seeding and creating what I call Corporation 2020, which is the corporation of tomorrow. A corporation whose goals are aligned with society, a corporation who is a learning institute for its employees, who is a community for its employees, its customers, and its partners, and who also is a capital factory, one who measures its impacts on capital, not only financial capital created for shareholders, but also natural capital impacted for stakeholders, for society at large, social capital, human capital, and so on. That kind of corporation requires the measurement and standardization and reporting of impacts on natural capital. And that essentially is the key task that the TEEB for Business Coalition has set itself. This work will take place over the next 3 to 5 years. And of course, most of you, I hope, are close to Singapore and able to collaborate even if you're not. And I very much look forward to this as a collaborative effort which tries to achieve one set of standards, not many, rather one set of standards which everyone is willing to follow. This is an industry-wide collaboration across many industries and a country-wide collaboration across many countries. And it needs to be that way. Can you just imagine what life would be like for analysts, for investors, indeed for corporations, if every corporation has its own way of calculating profit and loss and its own calculation of balance sheet and depreciation rates and charges and so on? It would be a nightmare. And that's exactly what we will see and exactly what will happen if we are not able to do this in a collaborative way. So that is my first and perhaps my most significant appeal to you at WWF and to all of you who are in some way or the other involved. Please work together. Please achieve this. Please achieve a highly scientific and well worked out and thoughtful approach towards measuring and managing corporate externalities. The measurement and management of externalities also happens and must happen at the national level. And that takes me to my next area of comment, which is green accounts for a green economy. And we have to do this for exactly the same reasons as we have to do it at the corporate level, which is that the Earth's limits, its Earth's biocapacities across many dimensions, be it climate change or biodiversity or nitrogen or coral reefs, are significantly affected. And we are close to or at many thresholds. And we cannot continue in this way, managing either at the corporate level or at the national level. The need to rethink our economies, the need to rethink along the lines of a green economy has been stated many times over the last few years. You're all familiar with this. But I think what particularly the government of Indonesia is working on is very interesting. They are clearly committed to a green economy. You have heard many times President Yudhoyono come out with the 4 key objectives of Indonesia in the long term in terms of poverty eradication, in terms of being pro-employment, pro-growth, but also pro-environment. The target of 26% CO2 emissions reductions is voluntary. It's on their own. Indonesia moves there. And with additional support from outside, including REDD+, such as the $1 billion commitment from Norway, they hope to achieve 41% reductions in emissions by the year 2020. In order to do that, in order to best also to leverage that commitment, one needs to think differently in terms of economic planning. One needs to think in terms of a 3-dimensional matrix of planning, not just a single-dimensional matrix which focuses largely on extractive sectors and on primary sectors. We have to think primary and secondary sectors, including manufacturing and services. Tertiary sectors, services, and the city economy are very, very important. And we have to think in terms of goals, not only economic goals, but also social goals, and of course, goals towards the environment. Because finally, the green economy's purpose is to achieve sustainable development. And if we don't design a green economy or an economy which is targeted at more than just one set of goals, which is the economic goals, then we are not going to have a green economy. But the good news is that clearly Indonesia is one nation where this is moving forward, not just at the national level, but also at the state level, at the province level. And I'm delighted that the initiatives taken by the province Kalimantan Tengah, Central Kalimantan, together with the new office that's been opened there for UN, which is the UN ORCID office, the United Nations Office for REDD+ coordination in Indonesia, are moving these ideas forward. Because just as REDD+ is an important mechanism which supports a green economy and supports green development, so also a holistic green development approach makes it easier for REDD+ to be successful. And I think this collective, cohesive, and province level and then national level form of planning is really what we need. It is not as if in Indonesia the MP3EI or the MP3AE plans need to be rejected or disbanded. They're there. They serve useful purpose in terms of largely primary sector development and largely development in order to achieve the economic goals. But we need additional plans and we need additional investments in order to develop the social goals, in order to develop the environmental goals and their achievement, and most importantly, I would say, to go beyond primary and secondary sectors. Because even in states like Kalimantan Tengah, there is opportunity for creating human capital if we develop a services sector model, if we grow the city, which is where human capital develops. It is very important frankly, for any developing country in the world, not just Indonesia, to think in terms of cities as the magnets of future human capital growth. Finally, it is cities which have driven high GDP growth as well. They are the ones who have driven agglomerations of expertise. They are the ones who have powered new industry and progress. And no matter who you are or where you are, any country which is seriously developing and hopes to achieve sustainable development needs to focus on the city and on the services sector that it engenders. It needs to focus on the building of human capital, and that very much is part of the economic planning that countries such as Indonesia hopefully will be able to achieve as they go forward. Please stay with these thoughts on green economy and green economic development. Please do what you can to support the Tea for Business Coalition. I'm sorry I could not be with you here today because of unforeseen and personal requirements elsewhere, but I hope to catch up with some of you at least tomorrow, that is on the 8th, because I will be landing up and catching up with the conference. All the best. Have a great meeting.